Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. I'm Adrian Danila, your host, and this is Multifamily Chronicles. My guest today is a very special guest, a guest that I've been chasing for months. He finally agreed to come on a show. Welcome to the show, Jack Daly.
Adrian, it's a joy to be with you. I love your energy.
Jack, just to say a little bit to the audience about yourself, you've been a leading sales speaker and trainer with over 30 years of sales and executive experience. Okay, you wrote 10 books, and then I want to start by asking you about your first book, about your last book first. And most people live life by default. Some people make a choice and they live life by design. The title of your book is Life by Design. Why did you choose that title, and why not Life by Default?
Well, Adrian, that is a big can of worms that we open up with that great question. So here's the bottom line. I was very blessed. At 13 years old, I took the summer and interviewed successful people and wanted to know how they became successful. And one of the biggest takeaways that I got was that you've got to have goals. They have to be in writing. Don't pick too many, share them with other people, and put some kind of a date on when you're going to get them done. And they said, an awful lot of people do this type of process in their business life, but they miss doing it on their personal life. And so I took a crack at that and planned my life out from 13 years old to 30, when I was thinking that's pretty old, where I'm going to be financially, professionally, family, and education. And if I could paint a picture of what I wanted to look like at 30, then all I needed to know was, what do I need to do between 13 and 30 in those 4 areas? So I designed my life from 13 to 30 at 13 years old. I am now 73 years old, and I can tell you that I've been doing this now for 60 years, living life intentionally.
That's such an inspiring story, Jack. As I said in the introduction, I've been trying to get you on a show, but I've been following you for a number of years. And the first book that I read, the first one of your books that I read is Hyper Sales Growth. And that's a book that really opened my mind in so many ways. I'm not a salesperson by trade, but the way you describe, for example, recruiting, which I'm really passionate about, and I do a lot of recruiting. I do training on recruiting. You actually put it in a way to where people understand that we need to use a salesperson mentality when we do recruiting. And that really inspired me. Would you like to elaborate on that a little bit? How a salesperson mentality in recruiting would help them become successful in recruiting?
Yeah, so, look, I'm all about 2 words that we don't very often find, particularly in the sales side of the world, which is systems and processes. My largest sales force, Adrian, was 2,600 salespeople. And we were operating out of over 100 locations in the US. And every visit I made, I would give a similar speech, which was, there aren't 2,600 best ways to sell this product. Let's figure out the best practices, build the systems and processes, practice the systems and processes, and I bet you we do really well against our competitors. Well, if we take that same philosophy and apply it to recruiting, all I hear in the marketplace is how difficult it is to find good people. But when I ask about, well, what process are you following on recruiting? Then I get a blank stare. For example, do you have a list of people that you're recruiting? Do you have a profile of the attributes of what makes a good candidate? I'm not talking about a job description, but a profile of the attributes of what makes a good person. Do you have a touch system where you're regularly courting those people? Look, the very best people out there, quite frankly, are very often happy where they're at and they're not looking for a job, but they do leave when something that I call life happens to them. Their company is sold, or they had a compensation change, or the industry fell flat, and we want to be at the ready. So I say, from a selling standpoint, if you're in the sales world, well, you've got a prospect list and you work the prospect list. In the recruiting world, you should have a prospect list and work the recruiting list.
One other thing that I read in your book and it stuck with me was that recruiting is not an event, it's a process. We should always be recruiting. Could you elaborate on that?
Of course. Look, I don't subscribe to something that I hear often out there, which is fully staffed. You're never fully staffed. You always have room for a top producer. And one of the things that I'm known for, Adrian, is this expression: sports teams are run better than most businesses. Now, if we take that concept of sports teams are run better than most businesses, ask any sports coach in any sport at any level if they have a recruiting list, and they would tell you absolutely. But they're fully staffed. But I'm always looking for somebody terrific. And so when you go and peel it back and you look at sports and you look at the sports teams that are most successful, what's behind that is they're always looking for an upgrade in talent. You always have room for top producers.
I actually use this idea of yours, and then what I propose to my industry, which is multifamily, that's what I'm gravitating. And I said, companies should build scouting departments, because I made a parallel. I used the parallel that you made, like comparing with the sports teams and why are they so successful comparing with other businesses. I said, create scouting departments and have individuals designated to just chase down talent. That's all they do day in and day out. Do you think that there's some value in that concept?
Absolutely. I'm going to go back to the sports analogy. We just had a legendary college basketball coach retire this year, and that was Coach K at Duke. Now, he'd been there at Duke for over 40 years, and during that 40-year career, they were in the championship games so often, year after year after year. Now, the team only has 15 players, and those 15 players at Duke were all high school All-Americans. So they're all very talented players. But if you were to ask Coach K if he had a list of people who's recruiting, he would say absolutely. And then if you asked him how many were on his list, he would say hundreds. And he had several people full-time on his payroll recruiting and scouring the world for great basketball talent. Part of the success of Duke was they're always looking for talented people, and he set up that scouting team to go out and find it. Why not do the same thing? Now, I'll show you something else that I find really of interest. When I ask my audiences to put a list together of 15 top candidates and begin recruiting them, there's groans in the audience like, 15, my God, that's a long list. And yet the sports teams are having hundreds. They're run better than most businesses.
That's pretty amazing that businesses, generally speaking, businesses don't really focus, don't really see that, hey, this is this is a successful model. Like this is how the top teams are staying up top by doing this. And all they really need to do is to copy, right?
Absolutely, and that's true, Adrian, in so many disciplines of business and life. It's a concept that I call model the masters. And if you want to do anything well, find people that are already doing it well and find out what they're doing. Let me show it to you this way. In a lot of companies, they have things called the President's Club or the Chairman's Club, where they honor the top salespeople. But what we often find is that the same people year after year make it into the club. Now, I have a client, for example, in Western Pennsylvania, and they do business all over the nation. They have over 400 salespeople, but only about 25 to 30 make the Chairman's Club each year, but 11 of them made it every single year. Now, they have the same economy, the same competitors, the same product, the same price, the same service, but 11 people consecutively year after year after year are making Chairman's Club. Find out what those 11 people are doing, build the processes based on that, and then practice them, and everybody's game is elevated.
That's fantastic. This is another thing that I'm noticing from my work experience, is that businesses tend to spend most of their energy into the sites, into the locations where most of the problems are. And then when you do this, you basically go from offense to defense, from proactive to being reactive, and you drain most of your valuable resources into working on fixing problems versus looking at your top talent, your top producers, and say, what are they doing right? Make a list and then take that list and implement it to the other sites that are not doing as well. It's a symptom in property management. Like, we're seeing this all over the place. Like, we're always tend to be in defense, always putting out fires, and we never gonna be get ahead unless we create the system where we're gonna have the best producers write the book and then implement it elsewhere.
Well, I'll go further than that. You nailed it just then, Adrian, but I'm going to go a little bit further. Where does the leadership of the company tend to spend the most time? Let's take the people that we have and put them in the quartiles. We have the top quartile, the second quartile, the third quartile, and the fourth quartile. Well, where we find, for example, a sales manager spends their time on the fourth quartile because they say, well, the first guys are doing really well. But if you go back to the sports teams that run better than most businesses, sports teams have first team, second team, third team. Where does the head coach spend their time? They spend it with the top team. And so we've got it ass backwards. Don't spend your time in the negative areas, the poor performing areas. Spend your time with your better people, and you'll elevate all of the game throughout the organization.
I want to stick a little bit to the recruiting, which you could tell that I'm very passionate about. Scaling companies from, basically zero to, you did say 2,600 employees, right?
Yes, I did.
That's fantastic. So what are a few things, what are a few secrets, where things that, really help you be successful at that level and build companies with 2,600 employees?
Well, that will take us days to answer. So let me see if I can put it in a compressed way. The biggest thing that I can tell you is that you've got to build a winning culture. Peter Drucker said it better than anyone: culture eats strategy for breakfast. And so if you build this winning culture, for example, if I take it back to Coach K at Duke on the basketball team, every high school basketball player wanted to be courted by Duke because they had built a culture of excellence. They built a culture of winners, and people want to be attracted and go to those places where they are nurturing the winners. So what are you doing to build a winning culture? And there are 4 legs, as I see it, to a strong culture. One is recognition systems, recognizing and rewarding people. Second, communication systems, letting people know where we're headed and how we're doing. Third is personal and professional development processes, showing people that if you come to work here, you're going to grow personally and professionally. And so you'll leave here better than when you arrived. And fourth is empowerment processes, and that is giving authority to people to make decisions without going through the chain of command. Well, if we can create those 4 legs to a strong culture, then you've got a place where 2,600 people will self-actualize. You won't have to tell them what to do. They'll go and do it on their own. And so you unleash this incredible energy. Now, on top of all of that, what we've been talking about earlier is critical. Systems and processes. In sales, I call it having a sales playbook. And so the side note is that our research tells us less than 2% of companies have documented sales systems and processes. 98% of companies are running around without a playbook. It is insanity. That would be like cutting my 2,600 salespeople loose and saying, make it up out there and do it your own way. It's craziness.
You know, this brings me to something, a picture that I'm seeing often on the internet. There's a desk phone and there's a sticky note on it, like with tape on it. And it says, pick me up, I'll make you money. I think it's something that is so simple. It's so amazing. Like it's the first rule, one of the first rules in a book, right? Don't you agree? Like you have the phone in front of you, you gotta answer the phone. Like if you want to make a sale, you gotta answer the phone. So you're absolutely right. We don't, you know, we're not seeing, we're seeing, I think scattered training here and there, but it's not a consistency. Like you said, we have to have a book. Without a book, without rules set in place, like things could go all over the place. And then, you know, we're not ending anywhere. With a lack of consistency, obviously, there's gonna be a lack of consistency in results, right? Don't you agree?
So if I can put that into some context here, Adrian, what we tell our salespeople throughout the world is this: the key to sales success is to stay focused on what we call high payoff activities, HPAs. More than 50% of a typical salesperson's time is spent on things that don't win new customers or grow the ones you have. And if you can get out of doing those non-HPAs and stay absolutely focused on the HPAs, being, as you said, proactive, not reactive, then you're going to generate a whole heck of a lot more business. So if we go back to the early stage of this broadcast, and you said you've been trying for quite some time to get a hold of me, well, the reason that it's difficult is because my schedule is packed every day for months out with HPAs, high payoff activities. And so for you to get into the schedule is very difficult. That is proactive. Reactive is where the salesperson is just waiting for a call and then they pick up the phone, or they're waiting for someone to walk into the store, or wait. I don't have a wait in me. All I know is how to just get up in the morning and start attacking my HPA list.
I want to make 2 points based on what you just said. You know, high payoff activities. I'm a strong believer, I'm a big believer in play to your strengths, not your weaknesses. Don't try to get your weaknesses to become some average. Focus on the top 3 or 5 things that you do the best and do that even better. And that's going to give you a ROI way higher than it will bring you, you know, just trying to improve your weaknesses. And there's another thing that I picked up from, you know, from your books and from conversations that you had, different other interviews, is that if you're doing, when you do admin work, right? When you do admin work, do I really need to do what I'm great at and also become the admin, or should I actually pay someone, you know, $12, $15, $16 an hour, let them do the admin work and me focusing on this? Would you like to elaborate a little bit about these two aspects?
Sure. And look, I'm gonna, you know, as a speaker, I can't avoid doing one-liners. And so here's the one-liner on that. If you don't have an assistant, you are one.
Excellent.
There are things that need to be done in life, but not necessarily done by you. You have to pick the ones where you're the strongest and the ones that will be the most lucrative. we call that word leverage. How do I generate more business with less work? So if I go all the way back to when I was 12 and 13 years old, I built a newspaper route of 32 customers into 275 in a year. But delivering 275 papers was an awful job. And I was going to school during the day and I'm in the dark delivering 275 papers and I had no time to sell anymore, which is what my talent was. So I hired 5 kids and paid them half the money the company paid me to deliver the papers so I could then sell more papers. Those were my 5 assistants. As a professional speaker today, what I can tell you is that I don't do a lot of the things that the other speakers do. For example, in a typical year without a pandemic, I average about 250,000 air miles a year. I would be terrible sitting in front of a computer booking my travel, but the majority of my speaker competitors are booking their own travel. I do a workbook for all of my presentations, but my skill set to sit in front of a keyboard is not there. And so I have assistants that do those things for me. And so if you don't have one, you are one. Yeah.
I love it. There's just so much wisdom in here. I got to keep going. I got to keep going because I have so many more questions. One of the things that really inspire me about you, Jack, is that you are a marathon runner. You competed in 15 Ironman.
15 full Ironmans, yeah. I have 15 under my belt, yeah.
Yes, and I also understand that you started it, fairly later in life. Like you haven't been doing this, like you didn't start it in your 20s or 30s. So could you tell the audience a little bit, like how old were you when you first started, and what really got you motivated to start, and also to get where you are today, because those numbers are absolutely impressive.
Yeah. So there's hope for all of us. And by the way, at 73, what I can tell the audience is this: even though I've had an incredible life journey to date, if you were to ask me, are my best years ahead of me or behind me, I would tell you my best years are ahead of me. I have some big plans going forward. But let's go in the rearview mirror and take a look. At 37 years old, I did not run at all. At 37 years old, one of my employees said there was a 5K starting and ending at my building for the Heart Fund, and it would be great as the CEO if I signed up because other people would follow me. So I did that, and I got into doing 5Ks, 3.1 mile. And then I couldn't find one weekend, so I signed up for a 10K, and then I liked that better than the 5K. So now I'm running 10Ks. It's just a little over 6 miles. And then I said, well, I might as well try a half marathon. And I did a half marathon, 13.1 miles. And I remember, Adrian, this is really great. I was sitting at dinner with my wife, and we were celebrating, and I had my medal and a glass of wine, and she was taking a photo, and I started laughing uncontrollably. And she said, what are you laughing at? And I said, I've never celebrated doing half of anything in my life. And she goes, are you serious? You're going to do a full marathon? And I said, yeah. So at 46 years old, I did my first marathon, 46 years old. Now, I can tell you, as of today, I've done 100 marathons, one in all 50 states and one in all the 7 continents. And I finished my 100th in Athens, Greece, just 5 months ago. And so there's no age limit when you can get started, and there's no age limit when you stop. That's the marathon story. Now here's the Ironman story, and this one's even better. I had on my list when I was in about my 40s to do an Ironman, but that requires a lot of training. Probably 25, 30 hours a week. And I was running a company, and I had my young kids at home, and I didn't feel like I had the time to really properly train. But when I sold my companies and I had no employees, and my kids grew up and they weren't even needing me as much as they needed, I said, I'm going to do that. And I was 58 years old. And the killer on this is, but I didn't know how to swim. And there's a 2.4 mile start to the Ironman on the clock with a swim, then a 112 mile bike, and then a 26.2 mile run. So I hired a coach to teach me how to swim. Then I practiced a lot of swimming. And then I signed up and at 58 did my first one. And in the next 8 years, between 58 and 66, 15 full Ironmans, including the Ironman World Championship in Hawaii. And then I did about 60 half Ironmans. Crazy.
I have no words. I really have no words. Yeah, you did say, and this is such a remarkable, such a remarkable thing to say from someone at your age, that your best years are ahead of you. This is so important. So I do want to circle back, and I want to go to something that you have in your latest book, and you're talking about your bucket list, which characterizes, I guess, your how you call them, crazy ambitions. When this your bucket list started, how it evolved, and how does that help you keep on track, and how does that bring meaning to what you do, to life in general?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was in my 20s, and I'm starting to get my eyes open on the world, and I would see people doing certain things that sounded exciting, and I said, well, I'm not really ready to do that now, or I don't have the money to do that now. I don't have the time to do that now, but I'm gonna start making a list. So I called it a life list, and I just would start memorializing all these things that I was going to do before I was too old to get them done. And once I started this life list, it made me more alert to conversations I'm having with people, and they would say they did this or they did that, and I'm like, wow, that's great. And then they traveled here and they traveled there. Travel was very appealing to me. So I'd never been to Paris. I'd never been to London. I at some stage of my life, I had never been to Las Vegas. And so I started putting all these things down on my life list. Here's what I'm going to go do. And so it got bigger and bigger. If you went to one of my websites, Jack Daly's lifebydesign.com or jackdalysales.com, if you went there, my bucket list is printed on there for all the world to see. And there's some tremendous things that I've done, like went into the sharks off of South Africa and the great white sharks. I'm in the water with them. The world's largest bungee jump in New Zealand. I flew a jet fighter plane with no flying instructions. I mean, there's crazy stuff that I've done. And then I have some really significant things on the list that are still ahead of me that are going to be really fun to do. And then I changed it to a bucket list when the movie came out, because I thought that was kind of cute, right?
Yeah, and it's also catchy. Like, people they have a point of reference. Knowing the movie, they have a point of reference, so it's easier to relate to that type of list. I want to stick to your latest book, and I have one more question about something that you're addressing in a book. You're walking your readers through what you call a year in the life. What is that about?
So before I answer that, just here's the book, Jack Daly's Life by Design. The picture is me standing in front of the Grand Canyon, and that's because I've done something called the rim to rim to rim, which is running from one side of the Grand Canyon down to the bottom, across the base, and back up, and then turn around and do it again. It's about 25 miles each way, so it's 50 miles in total. It's about 650 flights of climbing, the equivalency of. So it's not for the meek, right? But let's go back to a year in the life of Jack Daly. So every 5 years, and I usually do it when I was 50, 55, 60, 65, 70. So the next time I'll do it is 75. You could do it every year if you wanted. But basically what I decide to do is every 5 years, I'm going to take at least one photo every single day. And I'm going to take my photos for the year and put them together into a coffee table photo book that's called A Year in the Life of Jack Daly. And what I wanted is I wanted to up my game. In other words, I wanted to have a book of photos where people would page through and say, you've done more in 1 year than most people do in their entire life. Now, the really cool thing about this, Adrian, is that you know when those years are going to happen, when you're going to be 70 or 75. So I save up some things and do them that year so that the book can be even more spectacular because I've already planned to make the life even better. I can tell you when I did it, when I turned 70, that book ended up being 4 books. We had to do them by quarter because the photo books were at least 100 pages each. And it was just like, are you kidding me, right? And so a couple different safaris and all the other crazy zany things that I'll do during those times.
That's just fantastic.
By the way, you go to bed at night, each night, and you're in your mind, you're going, well, based on my calendar tomorrow, I think this will be my photo. But when you wake up, you go, let's keep an eye out. Maybe we could find some other activity that goes on that's even better today. So you're on the search for how can I have a better life? What you don't want to have is you don't want to have a photo book where there's 300 pages of you sitting behind your computer at your desk. That would be what a terrible life, right? So, people say they want to be more successful. I mean, the hands go up in my audience, but you can't define success. You can't get there if you don't know what it is. And by the way, the real cool thing about the bucket list, Adrian, is I publicize it because so many people look at it and go, have you got that one done? I can help you do that. I can help you do that. But if we don't know what we want to do personally and we don't share it with the universe can't help us get what we want done. So that's the life by design.
Jack, if you were to turn back time and be 20 years old again, what would you do different with your life, if anything?
So there's not a lot that I would give to that answer because I have been so intentional about my life. But if I look in that rearview mirror at that 20-year-old and said, okay, what are the things that we could do that would accelerate and enhance your life beyond the one that you've already had? The thing I would tell you is, don't be hesitant to try new things and don't be hesitant to take risks. And because the worst thing that can happen is it didn't work and you do something else. But if you don't try things, you'll never know whether it was feasible or not feasible. Look, I went to school as an accountant. I graduated with an accounting degree. And, if you take your prototype of what an accountant looks like, and then you look at where I've been for the last 25 years as a professional speaker on stage with all of the people that are on Shark Tank, on stage with Richard Branson, on stage with all of these different people that you just go, wow, that guy is a celebrity. You don't think of it as a guy that's an accountant, right? But this accountant took the courage to take a risk and left the world that he was comfortable in to put himself into a world that was not so comfortable. I'll give you this part, and I've never really shared this on any program, but I was a very successful business leader making 7 figures annually with lots of stock and so forth. And I had my own chef, my own driver, a jet on call at Burbank Airport, a helicopter on the roof of my office, a pretty nice gig. And I left that world to become a professional speaker. And I called myself the first couple of years, what I was the starving speaker. My first year, I made less than $70,000 a year. I left all of those nice trinkets and that very comfortable income to go into a world that was new for me. And what I said to myself was, this is what I think I really want to do. And I'd like to give it a great shot. And if I don't succeed, I can always go back to the other world. But if I don't take a risk, I'll never know, and it'll always haunt me. What could I have done, and how could I have been more impactful with my life? So my impactful life is so much enhanced by what I've been doing for the last 25 years compared to the earlier 30 years as a business leader and owner.
That's such amazing thing. That is such amazing thing. Meaningful work. Do something that's meaningful to you. Not to say that what you did before was not meaningful, but bring more meaning into your life than what you had. Like increase that percentage of meaning in what you do. It's just a phenomenal. I would love for people to watch at least this part to understand that really, like, you could have such a fulfilling life if you're just driven by meaningful work. There's
Adrian, I will share this with you. It is so gratifying and humbling to get snail mail, emails, text messages from people all over the world telling me how I impacted them in some way. Now, I can tell you about these business success stories of clients where they've gone from a relatively small business to a very large business and very successful. I could do that. And I could tell you about people that were making $50,000 and $60,000 and $70,000 a year that are making 6 figures and some of them 7 figures annually as a result of things that they learned as a result of working with me. But the best stories, and I have several of them in Life by Design, the best stories are people that their personal lives were enhanced. There's a story of Michael in my book here where he was over 400 pounds in his late 20s. And he knew that he was really going to live a short life if he didn't get his act straightened out. He came to me and asked me to do a triathlon with him, and I eventually did. And today he has done marathons and Ironmans and weighs about 200 pounds. And he basically said, you just magically changed my life. His parents tell me that I saved his life. Now, I think that's going too far, but these are the things that really give me the energy to get up every morning and want to make a difference. I don't know where my next Michael is, but there's a next Michael out there, and I'm going to be there for them.
That's just such an amazing story and super inspiring. Like, we can't help everybody all the time, but if we could make a difference in one person's life, our life is completely different. Like, it has that, it brings meaning like nothing else, really. Just being able to see that one single person that you were able to help, turn their life for the better by following, something that you said or you have done, your advice. And in part, this is the reason why I try to bring people like you on the podcast, because I try to get the word out there for many people that really, they're lonely. They don't know whom to turn to for advice. If they could take 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes of their time to watch a video like this and get so much wisdom that you're sharing with the audience right here, it could literally change their life. It's the ROI here is amazing, and that's what really one of the reasons that drives me to do those podcasts so I could share with the world successful stories and inspiring story like yours, with the hope that we could multiply. So it's not just whom you're impacting in person, but on video format, this could go to hundreds or maybe thousands of people that could watch the video and say, wow, like I could really be that person.
So let me show it to you another way that any person who's tuning in on this podcast could actually impact the world. I'm very active in social media, so I'm just going to use Facebook as an example. And on a sad note, my wife of 47 years, her name was Bonnie, passed away in 2017 to pancreatic cancer. I'm now remarried to a long-term client, and her name is Karen. And when Karen got together with me, she had been a client of mine for 20 some years, but didn't know me in a personal way like she does today. Well, when we got together and moved in together, she started to see people making comments to me in a variety of different ways that said, you have inspired me to get off my ass and go exercise. Every day I exercise, and I do quite a bit of it. And I post whatever I've done on Facebook, what my exercise for the day was. And people say, every day, there you are doing these rowing and riding a bike and running and all swimming and all the things you're doing. And you give me the guilt. And I just said, well, if this guy can find the time to do it, I'm going to get up and do it. And so Karen said all the time previous to that, because she didn't know what the backdrop was, she wondered, why is Jack always posting all of this stuff about his exercising? What she didn't realize is I'm posting it to encourage people to go take better care of themselves physically. And if I only touch and impact one person, isn't it worth it, right? And so no matter who you are, if you can demonstrate that you're elevating your game of life, I think you're going to positively impact others.
Absolutely right. Right on. Right on. I would love to keep going for maybe, do you have like 3 more hours?
Got me.
In all honesty, Jack, I really love to do like a second episode. I know that, we, due to your schedule and everything, we can't go for too long. I would love to go for, for longer, for way longer than, what we did, because I just can't get enough of this conversation. I really can't.
Yeah, but here's the thing, Adrian. I think that we should have a second session, but people won't stay with you if you go much longer than where we've been so far.
That's also a possibility, because people tend to say, well, if I could listen to this on my way to work, I'm gonna hit play. But if it's gonna be a 2-hour long video, maybe not. Like I don't have the time, so they get discouraged by the format. So in closing, for right now, for the first episode with Jack Daly, Jack, something that I didn't ask, I didn't cover, that you really wish we would have talked about in closing.
Something that I wish that we would have covered?
Yes.
I don't know. Here's this. How about this? If my best years are ahead of me, what's some evidence of that? Well, I'm in all likelihood going to refocus my energy on kids as opposed to adults, and showing them how to have an incredible life. And so I'd love to get a hold of teenagers and take them through life by design. So that's one of the things that I have going on in my future. Another thing is, what are some things on my bucket list that I haven't checked off that I've got that are pretty heady stuff? Well, one of them is to meet a president of the United States in the Oval Office. Another is to take a ride on Air Force One with the president. Another one is to run with the bulls in Pamplona. And another one is to carry the torch during the Olympics. And another one is to play golf at Augusta, where the Masters is played. So there's about 5 bucket list items that if anybody's listening in and you can make one of those happen, I'd love to have that happen. And again, one of the other things that I'm playing with right now is I just finished my 10th book, but I'm thinking that I may do a series of children's books, like Cat in a Hat type of thing. And so that has all of the aspects of Jack's going to fail. It's a lot of risk, but that's where I like to place myself to see if I can take my game to another level, right?
That's fantastic. I love to have you back here, Jack. I love to have you back. I have such a much longer list of questions. Some of them that I had prepared for the episode, and some of them that actually came from the conversation with you that due to time constraints I couldn't do. So hopefully we could do an episode down the road, another one.
We will make it happen. We just need to find that time in the calendar, but we will do that.
Absolutely. Jack Daly, was a real pleasure, sir. I couldn't get enough of this conversation. Thank you very much. You've been very generous with your time, and with your wisdom. You are inspiring. You are inspiring a lot of people out there. Just keep it up.
I appreciate you doing the podcast and appreciate you pushing it out into the universe. Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you, Jack.
Stay healthy, my friend.
Everybody, thank you very much for watching us. This is Multifamily Chronicles. I'm your host, Adrian Danila. I hope to see you back here for another episode. Have a great day.